Welcome, Libra, to your in-depth weekly astrology overview and zodiac forecast for week commencing the 27th of April for the ascendant, the sun, or the moon. Going to share with you, first of all, the big themes of the week ahead. Then on screen, your event chart as you come into the week always provides an influential backdrop. I'll then go through each of those influences frame by frame to give you a clear picture of what you can expect by the end of the video in terms of your energy, your work, relationships, and finances. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundel. A very warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now to help it to continue to thrive. But please also click or tap the bell notification symbol. As ever, at the start of each week, we need to be mindful of the two luminaries, which I'll show you shortly on the screen. But let's just talk about the exciting events at the end of last week. Venus, your ruler, followed by Uranus, moved into the fellow air sign of Gemini. Now, Gemini is about quick communication, but Venus here is particularly alluring. Her vivaciousness and appreciation in the ninth house, and definitely next to Uranus, is to understand the truth of relationships. So if you have been going through a little bit of an unclear time, you're going to be determined to find out what's what as you come into this week. But equally, as last week came to a close, the Sun and Pluto forged one of astrology's most challenging aspects, the right angle. Now, the Sun is in a part of your chart that can be to do with evolving deeply, but it also is very much to do with where we can be devoted, and it can be about shared finance and also intimacy. Whereas Pluto, the planet of power, is in your fifth house, very much to do with your desire for joy and pleasure. Now, that has started to separate as we come into this new week, but it's still very potent. I need to unpack that for you too. Now, Venus, your ruler, does forge a quite beautiful link to Neptune at the start of this week, despite its restless conjunction to Uranus, and then goes on to link fabulously well to Pluto and then Saturn. What a week for your ruler. And because she's now in the ninth house, which is to do a conversation and exchanging things and information, her curiosity is definitely turned up to max. But that could mean you have some sparkling connections right through this week. Which brings us to the full moon, which occurs on the 1st of May. It's in the sign of Scorpio. Across the heavens is the sun in the earthy Taurus, but intersecting the pair of them is Pluto. It's a little bit broad, but Pluto for you is in that part of your chart where you want joy. But if something feels a little heavy, a little possessive, or maybe you're a little bit attached to something that's not very good for you, it could show up in terms of the lunation. But right at the end of the week, Mercury moves out of your sector of relating and into that deep eighth house. But here it can be brilliant to decipher some of the information that has been exchanged earlier in the week. So on the screen, Libra, is your event chart. So there's that dynamic duo of Uranus and Venus. Right at the end of last week, they came into a conjunction in the eighth house. It may have been that you splashed out on something that you've desired for some time. But in the ninth house, they definitely want stimulation, but also that higher truth. So if a relationship has felt unclear, I think you're going to be a little bit uncompromising about what you will or will not accept. But if you're wanting to bring some extra animation and sparkle into your discoveries over the next year, this is a quite incredible combination. Now, in terms of your professional situation, Jupiter, the planet of expansion, knowledge, but also of good fortune, remains very elevated in your chart in the 10th house of work, but is in a square with Mercury. So that is a square which actually can give us a lot of enthusiasm. But if you are encountering someone for the first time, you have your own business, you work in promotion or sales or front of house, just be aware that that can be an aspect that can see us overgild the lily. But I mentioned to you about the Sun and Pluto. You can see that the Sun has moved to 6 degrees 45, but on last Saturday they were exactly square. If you have been seeing someone and it's got a bit heavy and it feels like they're trying to control, or there's some dark energies, perhaps around jealousy, it may even be a bit manipulative, that could be a real red flag for you. And that may be why this dynamic combination can push you to separate and free yourself, Uranus, from something that isn't meeting your higher expectations. Now, in terms of your financial situation, Pluto in the fifth house can be very much about speculation. And Pluto, of course, can be about unearthing things that aren't obvious. So, through research, maybe you will prize open some knowledge that can help you to make an investment decision, if that's something you're considering. But that square with the sun, again, is urging you to proceed with a little bit of caution. But going back to Venus, so for sure, if a relationship's been bumping along the bottom, Venus conjunct Uranus can bring it suddenly to a close. But you know, the opposite can be true too. That's such a charismatic combination. And Venus is linked to Neptune, the planet of dreams, is almost exact as we begin this week. And that can be an aspect which engenders true love. And if you're lucky enough, therefore, to encounter someone this week where you do feel really comfortable with them, you feel that their values match yours, perhaps they've got a love of the arts or travel or culture, or perhaps you've decided to do something off the cuff with an ongoing relationship that's going well, that's to do with those areas, spontaneously booking something. So that's really sweet. And then Venus moves forwards and comes into a trine with Pluto. Now, Venus Pluto aspects can see us finding it difficult to get someone we really like out of our minds. But because it's a trine, it's much more enabling. So if you are someone with quite a broad sort of experience and you meet someone and you have a date and you fancy them, that's the fifth house energy. Pluto can also be their aura of power, perhaps, but you can converse and share those things. You could have a connection that's almost fated, almost, I would say, karmic. However, then Venus moves on and connects back to the steady eddy of the zodiac, Saturn. If you're lucky enough to be in a long-term relationship which is going well, but you both enjoy the same kind of interest pursuits, or you're both up for a travel plan, that could get booked later in this week too and turn out to be extremely enjoyable. But with the sun in the eighth house, that's very much about your long-term finances at a more practical level. And as the week goes on, the moon moves round, comes into Scorpio on Friday, where it's in its full FALL. Now, the moon's detrimented in the sign of Capricorn, which is opposite the sign it rules of Cancer. But the Scorpio full is intriguing because, of course, it's a water sign. But the moon in Scorpio can be a little nervous. And if there is something that you feel is very hard to resist, whether it is someone in a more intimate way, whether it is a lifestyle choice, whether it is splashing out money on that luxury that you appreciate, uh, absolutely appreciate. You're being asked on this particular full moon to really review your deeper motivations, Scorpio, in that second house. So whatever you need and need it now, particularly with Pluto in the T square, just think why that might be. But by the end of the week, Mercury, which started the week in that potentially bubbly right angle to Jupiter, moves into your eighth house. This is your opportunity to don your astrological detective's map, because the eighth house and Mercury is ace for unearthing nuggets of detail and information. But the eighth house could be, if you are thinking about the aforementioned marshalling of your resources, looking at using your finances in a bit of a different way. So I'm going to summarize those four areas of energy, work, relationships, and finances next, Libra. But just to say, I've slashed the price of my personal horoscopes. It's now three for the price of one. The one you pay for is the Life Roadmap Report, which helps us to understand the patterns that are played out in our lives so far, but get a more intimate understanding of them, but then guide our future steps forwards with more assurance. But the free charts are your 12 months transit forecast, but also your draconic soul karmic analysis. Please see below for more. Why? I realize people are feeling the pinch, but I genuinely, passionately want to share natal astrology with more people because once we understand how the planets impact on us purely as individuals, it can bring so much illumination to our future. Now, if you've yet to watch your May monthly forecast, that's on the screen. If you've yet to watch your Uranus into Gemini 1 year forecast, that's on the screen. If you'd like to work with me one to one, be a pleasure. Please check out my testimonials below. If you've yet to sign up for your free daily written horoscope, find your device each morning for your celestial early day pit stop. Please take advantage of that. You can check for your ascendant, your sun, moon, for a partner, whoever you wish. And now I'm going to recap those four areas for you. So, in terms of energy, Saturn continues, and Saturn can, of course, be about limitation in the part of your chart to do with your connections to others. So, certain connections are a little draining, might be people you actually like, but not necessarily people who always give you that uplift. Maybe Saturn's urging you to just be a bit more aware of your boundaries. But as far as your work is concerned, Jupiter continues right through to the end of June to give you a fabulous chance to raise your profile in a potentially fortunate way. As far as money is concerned, Venus is very much about loot as well as relating. And in that conjunction with Uranus in the ninth house, it may prime your interest in doing something that's very different, particularly to do with any form of new technologies. Why not? But the position of Pluto in your fifth house of speculation and that clash with the sun in the eighth house does suggest understanding the impact an investment could have if it doesn't work out as you hope. And I think the full moon this week does ask you to balance the books between your daily budget and just putting enough away for that future plan. So finances do require a little bit more care this week, but perhaps most of all, it's becoming more conscious of your expenditure on things that may give you some kind of immediate uplift, but are they truly necessary? Have a great week, Libra. Thank you so much for joining me and looking forward to seeing you again soon.